Hello readers, I'm the Avid Reader and today we're reviewing Dragon Thief, published in 2017 and written by Michael Crichton in 1974. Michael Crichton is an amazing sci-fi author who unfortunately died in 2008. 3 of his novels were published posthumously. This is the final one, Dragon Thief, published in 2017, and he actually wrote this in the 70s. This book is a bit different from other Michael Crichton books. Usually they're science fiction, but this one is historical fiction actually. There's no sci-fi really. And it's called Dragon Thief and it's about dinosaur bones, but I need to emphasize there are no real live dinosaurs in this book. It's just about dinosaur bone hunting in the west of the United States and Indians and the Wild West. So it's historical fiction taking place in 1876, mainly in the western United States. And I can say Michael Crichton can write great historical fiction. So the book centers around the character William Johnson, who's a student living in Philadelphia. He makes a bet for $1,000 that he's gonna go to the west during this summer and going to dig up some bones. And to do this, he goes to this man called Othniel Charles March, who's one of the main paleontologists in the 1870s, the other one being Edward Drinker Cope, and they're competing to find dinosaur bones in what's known as the Bone Wars. And Johnson convinces Marsh to bring him by telling him he's a photographer, kind of. But that's a lie, so he goes and takes some photography classes before coming along for a trip. But Marsh does not trust him, so when they arrive in Cheyenne in the west, Johnson wakes up one morning and finds out that Marsh left him alone. And during breakfast, he meets Edward Drinker Cope, who proposes to bring him along on his expedition, and William Johnson agrees. So they travel to Montana and dig up a bunch of bones, including what is known as dragon teeth, which are actually large teeth of the Brontosaurus, one of the largest dinosaurs. This book also gives a lot of historical context of a lot of different things, so you get some information about George Custer and that he's been killed now. You get some information about the dinosaur debate, whether they existed in the 19th century, but they have found so many bones that they're gonna need 2 trips to bring them all. So on the second trip, William Johnson proposes to go and get them for Cope, and he brings 3 other people with him, and Cope agrees. So they go there, but there's a Sioux war. The Sioux Indians are coming, and so you have one guy and the Indian guide Little Wind, who leaves him and Toad behind to go get the bones themselves, and they go and load them up. But there's an attack of Indians, and Little Wind shows up and helps them, goes into the wagon. Toad gets an arrow and dies, and Little Wind gets wounded, and they basically go over the edge of a cliff but somehow survive. And the other guy who returned to Cope, while he dies when he arrives because of his wounds. So Cope assumes that William Johnson is dead, so he writes to his family in the east that he's dead. And the Indian, Little Wind, knows he's going to die within a few days because of his wounds, so he helps William Johnson to make a trip to the nearest town. And right before arriving to Deadwood, Little Wind dies. So William Johnson arrives to Deadwood exhausted. He's a little bit wounded, so he gets that taken care of. He puts the bones he has brought with him in a storage room, and he gets a job there as a photographer. As you cannot really leave Deadwood, as there are highwaymen on the road who will pick you off if you try to leave. So he makes a bit of money doing photography. The army visits the town once, so Johnson tries to come along. They agree, but he's taking a picture that shows the proof of a murder, so he's put in protective custody in jail. So the army leaves without him, and he's released the next day. But now he's stuck in Deadwood, and now the murderer, Black Dick Curry, has something against William Johnson. And Johnson puts his bones in his room. You have a night where they come to attack, and there's a shootout, and he actually kills Black Dick Curry's brother. So now Black Dick Curry is even more angry. And one day, Black Dick Curry challenges him to a shootout, and William Johnson agrees. And the outcome of the shootout is Black Dick Curry is shot in the shoulder, so he leaves, but he promises that he's gonna kill William Johnson someday. And William Johnson, he's been here several weeks now, he decides it's time to get the hell out of there. So he goes to Wyatt and Morgan Earp and hires them as bodyguards for the trip. And he's gonna give them half the bones in exchange for that. So they go on this trip, and you have 2 raids by Black Dick Curry. First time, they come out unscathed. Second time, you have the Earp brothers who bushwhacks Black Dick Curry and his gang, so they get scared off and run off. And then they arrive back in Cheyenne. There they happen upon Marsh, and he tries to buy Earp's half. The boxes of bones that are sold to him are empty actually, so Earp's a con man and he got some money tricking Marsh. And for a little time, Johnson is thrown into jail because the telegraph sent to his father. His father thinks it's an impersonator because he thinks his son is dead. But Johnson sends another telegram using familiar words to his father to show that it's really him, so he's released from jail soon afterwards. And he proceeds to make his way back to Philadelphia, and there he brings the bones he's found to Edward Drinker Cope, and he confronts Marsh, and Marsh is all puffy of not getting the bones, and then he has dinner with his family, and that's the story. So how would I rate Dragon Thief? I'm gonna give it a 9 out of 10. This is in the lower half of Crichton books I've read, but it's still a great novel, and it's very well written, fast-paced historical fiction. It's just that some of the time the plot gets confusing, like how Johnson gets left behind to get the bones himself. That's not well explained. That confused me, and I thought that Cope had betrayed him, but in the end I get clarity that it didn't really, but it's a little confusing, some parts of this book. In this Michael Crichton novel, there are a lot of plot twists. Otherwise, it's great historical fiction, taking place in 1876, and if you want to learn about the Bone Wars, or want to learn about the disputes between the American Army and Indians and the Sioux Wars, then I greatly recommend you to read Dragon Thief by Michael Crichton. Don't read this expecting it to be a dinosaur novel. It's a Wild West novel. But if you ever wanted to read late 19th century American historical fiction, then this is a great start, Dragon Thief. And if you're interested in other books by Michael Crichton, then I would recommend you to check out my book review of Disclosure, which he wrote in the 90s, and that's about sexual harassment being reversed, so a woman boss harassing a guy and the consequences of that. And you get to see how corporations work and handle this. Crichton writes this in a thrilling way, so check out Disclosure. Anyways, I'm the Avid Reader, and I will see you readers next time.